Okay, in this vodcast, we're going to do a little review of the cell cycle, which includes mitosis. And we did talk a lot about these in biology class last year or a couple years ago for some of you, but I think it's important to kind of refresh in your mind what this means before you do the lab that's involved with this. So the cell cycle refers to the entire life cycle of a cell. Just like humans have a life cycle where we start as little newborns and go to toddlers and adolescents and so forth, the cell has different growth stages as it goes through its life as well. One of those little stages is mitosis, which is when the cell reproduces. But there are a lot of other things that happen to a cell as well besides just going through mitosis. So first we're going to look at kind of the parts of the cell cycle, and then we're going to focus in on mitosis. So let's look at these stages of the cell cycle first. So the first stage of the cell cycle we call interphase, and interphase actually takes up most of the time of a cell's life. Okay, I'm going to start interphase here, and then I'm going to pause it just so we can look at what's going on. In interphase, you can see up here as I click on these, it has different parts. The G1 phase is when the cell just grows and gets bigger and has more organelles in it. The S phase is when the chromosomes replicate or make copies of themselves. And the G2 phase is when the centrioles replicate. Remember, the centrioles have an important part in cell division. We talked about that earlier in the unit. Now we're going to learn about what their role is. So on this picture here, we've got 2 strands of DNA now instead of just 1. So that has replicated. And there are centrioles that have been made right up here. Alright, so we're going to go through interphase. Like as I said, takes up most of the time of the cell's life. And then when the cell's big enough and has everything replicated, has all the parts it needs to, then it goes through mitosis. So we're going to look at what that is. First stage of mitosis is prophase. I'm going to stop it here. Let's look at some of the things that have happened in prophase. In prophase, the centrioles go to either side of the cell. Okay, you can start to see these things called spindle fibers starting to form. The DNA is now condensed into what we call chromosomes, and each chromosome is made of 2 parts called a sister chromatid, which is attached in the middle by a centromere. Okay, by the time we're in the step called Prometaphase, which is kind of between prophase and metaphase, the nucleus is gone, right? The nuclear envelope or the nuclear membrane has disintegrated, and also the spindle fibers have completely formed kind of a web like across the middle of all the chromosomes. Remember that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, so we'd have chromosomes all over this web. This model is just showing 2 chromosomes, or 1 pair. You can also see a little bit better now the centromeres that are holding the 2 sister chromatids together. Move on to the next stage, metaphase. It's when those chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell. Again, it's the spindle fibers that help them to do that. And then anaphase is when those chromosomes actually split apart. And you notice how that happened is our spindle fibers, down here, shortened, pulling the sister chromatids apart at the centromere. Okay, so now this piece over here, which was once attached to this piece over here, have separated. Remember though, they are identical to each other because the DNA replicated way back in interphase. So this side of the cell is getting identical pieces of sister chromatids as this side of the cell over here, which these 2 pieces are identical as well. So anaphase is when those sister chromatids split. Finally, at the end, in telophase, you see the sister chromatids start to unravel or unwind into their DNA again, the chromatin. We've got the cell membrane, the nuclear membrane and the nucleolus reappearing. And then through a process called cytokinesis, the cytoplasm is actually split into 2 different cells from the cell membrane pinching in. And remember that we put identical copies of sister chromatids in both of these cells, so the DNA that they contain in both of these cells is now identical. So we made a copy of the parent cell into now 2 daughter cells. So that's a quick review of mitosis. Hopefully you remember most of that. Next thing we're going to go to is a little movie on mitosis. I like this because it's a little more realistic. It shows you a little bit better what this actually
Cell
looks
division
like.
functions in asexual reproduction and in the growth and repair of organisms. Cell division consists of two processes. Mitosis, the division of the nucleus, is usually followed immediately by cytokinesis, the division of the cytoplasm. This time-lapse video of cell division in a newt lung cell speeds up division by a factor of 100 or so. You will see a process that normally takes more than an hour happen here in less than a minute.
Alright, so I'm going to show that again now, pointing out the steps we just talked about, but I like the little narration because it tells you some interesting stuff. For example, mitosis in the cell often takes an hour or longer. Alright, so back to the beginning. I'm going to turn the volume down for us. And again, talk through what we have here.
Cell division functions in asexual reproduction and in the growth and repair of organisms. Cell division consists of two processes. Mitosis, the division of the nucleus, is usually followed immediately by cytokinesis, the division of the cytoplasm. This time-lapse video of cell division in a newt lung cell speeds up division by a factor of 100 or so. You will see a process that normally takes more than an hour happen here in less than a minute.
So we have two new cells, each with identical DNA in them. And that's what it really looks like, which I think is cool to see the actual chromosomes themselves going through mitosis. Alright, so now that we've had a little bit of review, let's look at this all together as one. As I said, interphase takes up the majority of the cell's life. Probably want to draw this in your notebook, by the way. Okay, so interphase has the biggest chunk of this pie. It's divided into these three stages, G1, S, and G2. We'll just do a quick overview again of what happens in each of these stages. In G1, the cell grows and develops. What that means is it's making, more mitochondria or more ribosomes or whatever it is that it needs. In synthesis, it doubles the DNA. Synthesis, remember, is making something. In this case, we're making another copy of the DNA. And in G2, the cell makes centrioles. Okay, so that's all interphase, all of those steps. Then we get to this section here, mitosis. That's all those steps that we talked about earlier, the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, which essentially splits up the chromosomes that are identical. And then finally we end it with cytokinesis, the splitting of the cytoplasm. Now we've got two new cells, and both of them will continue through this entire growth cycle.